My sister asks me a week before the wedding to sleep with her fiancé because he's in love with me, but now the whole family knows, especially my grandfather and my dad. I never imagined something like this could happen to me. You know, life seems pretty simple when you're younger. You grow up, see other people getting married, and think it's just going to be a string of happy moments, and that your job is just to show up, watch everyone else, throw the rice at the church exit. No one prepares you for what happened to me. And it all happened so fast, but at the same time, it was so deep. I was 20, about to be the maid of honor at my sister Maria's wedding. I'd always looked up to my older sister. She was pretty much everything I wanted to be: confident, decisive, beautiful. She was 25 and about to marry Matteo, a guy I'd known for years, almost like an older brother. He was fun, caring, and always treated me and my sister with so much warmth. But over the past few months, something had been changing. I just didn't know what it was, until I finally figured it out. It was a Wednesday night, and the wedding week was finally here. I was trying to find something nice to wear to the event. It felt like I was in another world, caught between the excitement of the preparations and the chaos of my own stress. For me, the wedding was making me more anxious than happy because ever since the date was set, I started feeling something weird about my relationship with Matteo. It wasn't hatred or anger, but this growing discomfort I couldn't ignore. It all exploded at a party at a friend's house. I was there, a little out of control because I'd already had more to drink than I should have. Matteo showed up, as always, with that protective, friendly vibe, trying to get me to drink more. He was the kind of guy who liked to see others having fun, but this time it went too far. I was kind of tipsy, leaning against the wall, my face flushed, and Matteo was way closer than I was comfortable with. He leaned in like it was just a joke, but the way he touched me, not aggressively, but insistently close, like it was something intimate, gave me chills. He wasn't the same bro anymore. He was too close. I didn't know what to do, what to say. I just felt a lump in my throat and a cold shiver down my spine. That night left a mark on me. How could I describe it to my sister without sounding dramatic or crazy? The next morning, I talked to her, but not the way I should have. I held back, trying to keep the peace, and she, with that smile only she had, said, "Oh, he was just trying to be nice. Don't worry, he just gets excited. You know how Matteo is. He's so good to everyone, you shouldn't think like that." She hugged me, and I was left speechless, with that weight on my chest, wondering if maybe it was just in my head, or maybe he had just gotten confused. Deep down, I didn't want any of it to be true. I wanted to trust Matteo. I wanted him to be the guy he always had been, the boyfriend of my sister who treated me with care and attention, who joked around and talked to me with no hidden agenda. But things kept getting stranger, and I didn't know how to handle it. I still remember his look on some occasions, like he was trying to disarm me, make me believe he was just looking out for me. And I kept feeling more and more uncomfortable. And then, the bomb dropped. There was 1 week left until the wedding. We were all gathered in the living room, Maria trying to plan her bachelorette party, when suddenly she looked at me with that look that meant she had something serious to say. "I need a favor from you," she said. I was a little confused, because my sister rarely asked for favors like that. And she, with that smile I didn't recognize anymore, continued, "I want you to spend the night with Matteo before the wedding. He's so tense about everything, and he has some unresolved stuff with you. I know it'll be a little weird, but I'm asking you as a sister. I need you to help him sort things out, so he can start the wedding with a clear head." Right then, I just went silent. It felt like the ground had disappeared beneath me. What was she asking me? What did she mean by unresolved stuff? I knew Matteo well, but I never imagined there was something like that, some kind of issue. It was like everything around me stopped for a second. I wanted to scream, ask why she was asking me something like that, but deep down, I knew she trusted him and probably thought I was just an overdramatic girl as always. She was there, looking at me with that soft look, like she really thought she was doing me a favor. But no, this had nothing to do with a favor. This was something dirty, something I didn't know how to explain without sounding like a crazy person. I had two choices: tell the truth and risk losing my sister, or accept the request and try to deal with what felt like a growing black hole inside of me. But I couldn't forget Matteo's look at the party. I didn't know what to do anymore. I didn't know what to do with the feeling that the ground had disappeared from under my feet. Everything I thought I knew, the images of my sister, Matteo, the life I imagined for us as a family, started mixing in a whirlwind of confusion. I found myself at a point of no return. Maria's words echoed in my mind, "I need you to help him sort things out, so he can start the wedding with a clear head." Deep down, I knew this had nothing to do with helping. It wasn't about Matteo, it wasn't about her. It was about something I couldn't fully understand, but I felt very clearly that it was wrong. The silence between us dragged on, and for a moment, I thought she might realize how much her request was affecting me, how much it was tearing me apart inside. But nothing happened. She seemed calm, almost too calm. And what happened next was even more devastating. Maria took a deep breath, and with that sweet yet calculated tone I knew so well, she said, "You have to do this for me, you know? I'm your sister, and I'm asking for a favor that will mean so much for our future. Matteo isn't a bad guy, he just gets lost sometimes. But you know he loves me, and he's so nervous. You have to understand, it's not just for him, it's for the wedding. If you do this, I'll never ask you for anything else." Those words hit me like a punch to the stomach. It was emotional manipulation at its purest form. I never imagined she would use our bond, our sisterly love, as a bargaining chip. She knew I loved her more than anything and that the last thing I wanted was to hurt her or mess up what she had with Matteo. But at that moment, I couldn't ignore what was happening anymore. What was at stake wasn't just Maria's request. It was everything. It was my own place in this story, my right to have my own perceptions about what was right and wrong. And I couldn't ignore that something was very wrong. I looked into her eyes, trying to find any spark of the sister I knew, the one who would protect me from anything. But there was nothing there, nothing but a decision already made, a gleam in her eyes I didn't recognize. She was blinded by her love for Matteo. And I realized in that moment that their relationship was toxic. It wasn't just a love story, there was something dark there, something she didn't want to see. And I didn't know how, but I had to show Maria what was in front of our eyes. Or maybe, I just couldn't look at her the same way anymore. "Maria, I can't do this," I finally said, my voice low but firm. She looked at me, and for a second, I saw the surprise on her face, like I'd punched her and now she was waiting for me to thank her. "I'm not going to sleep with Matteo. No matter what he or you tell me. This isn't right." Her expression changed, and the calmness that had once ruled was replaced by something more dangerous. There was a tense silence, like I'd just broken an invisible barrier. She sighed and, with the most serious voice I'd ever heard, said, "You don't get it, do you? You're being selfish, and you're making me out to be the villain in your story. Matteo is suffering. He's not the monster you think he is. If you loved me, you'd do this for me, so I could have the life I've always dreamed of. You're putting me against him. You're making me choose between our relationship and what's best for our marriage." It felt like a deep pain, like a chasm had opened between us. I was speechless. How could she be saying this? How could she let herself be manipulated like this? How could she look at our history, our family, and say that I was being selfish when she was the one allowing herself to be lost in something I saw as a colossal mistake? "I think you don't understand me anymore, Maria," I replied, the words heavy, as if each one added more weight to my shoulders. "You're blinded by Matteo. I feel distant from you, distant from our history. I can't see my sister here anymore, not with him." She shuddered, and then I saw a tear roll down her cheek, but it wasn't sadness. It was anger. She looked at me with disdain, like I was the one who was wrong, and the worst part was, for a moment, I started to believe she was right. Maybe I was being selfish, maybe I was an intruder in their relationship. But a part of me knew I was doing the right thing. Even so, the feeling of losing Maria, of watching her slip away from me, was devastating. I didn't know what to do. I wanted to save my sister, wanted to pull her back into our reality. But I couldn't anymore. I couldn't force something she had already chosen. In the following days, everything felt foggy. Maria avoided me, and when she did talk to me, the tension between us was almost palpable. On my side, I tried to process what was happening and what I should do next. I knew I couldn't keep being complicit in something so wrong, but at the same time, The pain of losing my sister, of seeing her lose herself like this, was eating me up inside. I even thought about backing out as maid of honor, not going to the wedding, cutting all ties. But that would mean cutting off a part of myself. It was like I was about to lose everything I knew, everything I had been. I couldn't see Maria the way I used to anymore. I felt like I was looking at a stranger. And that hurt more than anything. I knew the wedding was coming, and with it, maybe our last chance to figure out what was left of us. I was torn between following my heart and trying to save my sister, or cutting off this relationship that had become impossible. The only thing I knew for sure was that no matter how it all ended, nothing would ever be the same again. That feeling of unease just wouldn't leave me alone. It was like a wave building up inside me, ready to swallow me whole. I couldn't stay silent anymore. I couldn't ignore what was happening, and something inside me told me that if I didn't do something, it wouldn't just be me losing everything, it'd be all of us. I had to speak up. I had to tell my family the truth, even if it was the last step I'd take toward the abyss. That morning, I woke up with my heart racing, faster than usual. The weight of the words still echoed in my mind. I need you to help Matteo. Please do this for me. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I couldn't keep sweeping this manipulation under the rug, hoping it would sort itself out. I felt like if I didn't speak now, my own dignity would be gone. So, with a determination that scared me, I called my parents. I knew I was going to catch them by surprise, but I didn't care. It wasn't the time to sugarcoat things, to offer weak explanations or give the impression that everything was okay. I needed to tell the truth. I needed them to know. Mom, Dad, we need to talk, I started, my voice a little lower than I would have liked. Something's really wrong, and I can't keep hiding it. It's about Matteo. The reaction was immediate. My dad paused, and my mom started asking what was going on. I invited them to my grandparents' house. I thought it was the best place to avoid making things even more tense. What I was about to say wasn't just heavy, it was disturbing. My mom stayed quiet on the way there, and my dad seemed nervous. He didn't know where this was going to end up. When we finally sat down in the living room at my grandparents' place, I looked at them and took a deep breath. There they were, the pillars of our family, eyes focused and ready to listen. I needed to be clear. I needed to be strong. I talked about Matteo's behavior, how he'd been acting weird around me, about the incident at the party. I told them how he'd tried to take advantage of my vulnerability and how his actions made me feel scared and uncomfortable. I showed them the messages he'd sent me, the conversations Maria had called normal, but to me, they were anything but. But what happened next was even more shocking than anything I could have imagined. Maria, who had arrived shortly after I started talking, didn't hesitate to jump in. She started speaking coldly, like she was talking about something trivial. This is nothing, Mom, Dad. I know what she's talking about, but it's not what she thinks. Matteo's not doing anything wrong. He loves me, and he's just trying to look out for her, help her, like any fiancé would. I wanted to scream. She was downplaying everything, twisting the truth, and worse, trying to make my family believe it. She tried to embarrass me right there, in front of everyone, saying I was exaggerating, that I should be grateful Matteo cared so much. But the worst was yet to come. She looked at me with a forced smile, and it was like everything she'd set up until then was just setting the stage for the final blow. I'll give you something you've always wanted. Money. You want that, don't you? If you do what I'm asking, if you help me, I can give you whatever you want. I know this will be good for everyone, you'll see. That sentence was a blow that cut through everything left of our relationship. She wasn't trying to convince me with words or affection anymore. She was trying to bribe me, by my loyalty with money. She thought all I wanted was cash. She didn't know me anymore, didn't understand a thing about me. What she was offering wasn't just a bribe. It was an offer to silence my pain, my anger, my doubts about everything that had been going on. I was furious. My blood was boiling. The anger rose up like a monster I couldn't control. The tears I'd swallowed so many times, the anxiety I'd held back, all came flooding out. I couldn't take it anymore. With a voice trembling with rage, but without hesitation, I decided to lay it all bare. All the dirt, all the manipulation, everything they'd tried to hide and minimize. I stood up, walked to my purse, and grabbed my phone. I made sure to show everything I had, the messages from Matteo, the recordings of the conversations, Maria's constant emotional manipulation. I couldn't let this slide anymore. "Look at this," I said, showing the messages where Matteo told me he couldn't marry Maria without resolving the feelings he had for me. I showed the videos where he tried to get close to me while I was drunk, touching me inappropriately, all while Maria turned a blind eye. I was exposing everything, without fear, without caring about what they thought. My parents, my grandparents, were silent for a moment that felt eternal. The shock in their eyes was palpable. But the truth was there, raw, cruel, exposed. They couldn't ignore it anymore. The silence was broken by my dad, who was visibly shaken. He looked at Maria, and for the first time, I saw a look of real disapproval on his face. "Maria, what did you do? How could you let this happen? How could you put our daughter in this situation?" And then my grandfather, always so firm and imposing, turned to Maria and said, "You're playing with your sister's life with our family, and it's impossible to pretend we didn't see this now. Matteo will never be welcome in our house again." I saw Maria break down. Not in the way I'd expected. She wasn't remorseful. She wasn't crying in regret. She was furious, but more than that, she was defeated. She knew she had lost. She knew there was no turning back. And in that moment, a part of me felt that, despite the pain, I'd done the right thing. I hadn't just confronted the truth, I'd freed my family from the illusion they'd been living in. The decision had been made. I'd exposed the truth, and now the story would take a turn no one could control anymore. The day of the confrontation was loaded with a tension that seemed to swallow every breath. I knew it was the moment everything would change. It was like time had stretched, and with every second that passed, I could feel the weight of my decision pressing down on me harder. What I'd done, what I'd exposed, there was no turning back. I knew that after this moment, nothing would be the same. When Matteo and Maria arrived at my grandparents' house, the tension in the air was thick. My dad, his eyes locked on Matteo, was trying to keep it together, but you could see the anger bubbling up. The silence between us was broken only by Matteo's steps as he walked in with that smug grin, like he had no clue what was about to go down. Maria, standing beside him, had that defensive posture, her eyes showing she already knew what was coming, but still trying to believe they could talk their way out of it. It was my grandfather who first broke the silence. He looked at Matteo with eyes full of distrust and disapproval. "You have something to say?" His voice was firm, but there was something in his tone that seemed heavy with silent rage. Matteo didn't hesitate, though. He smiled, but it was an empty smile, like he already knew what he was facing. "Yeah, I do," Matteo said, looking at all of us. He turned to me, and it felt like a knife was being drawn across my skin. "I've always been in love with her," he continued, without missing a beat. "Since she was younger. I knew she couldn't see it back then, but I always knew things would become clear between us one day." Those words hit like a bomb in the middle of the room, making everyone's heart beat faster. I felt my stomach churn, and the rage exploded inside me in a way I never thought possible. "You're telling me you've always wanted my sister? Even when she was a child?" My voice came out low, but sharp, like a knife cutting through the air. Matteo tried to justify himself, talking about the love he felt, but none of it made sense. He felt entitled to have feelings for me, treating me like something he could claim, no matter how it affected my life, my integrity. And then it was like my dad lost whatever patience he had left. With one swift movement, he stood up and, in a burst of rage, punched Matteo. The sound of the punch echoed through the room, and for a moment, time seemed to stop. Matteo, stunned, tried to react, but was held back by my grandfather, who grabbed him with surprising strength. Matteo's dad, who had been quiet up until then, didn't have the guts to step in. He was visibly ashamed. Maria, though, didn't seem embarrassed at all. She ran to Matteo, cupped his face in her hands, and said, with tears in her eyes and a strength I never knew she had, "He's my choice, and he's good for me. I don't care what anyone thinks." I looked at her, not understanding anything anymore. How could she be defending Matteo, knowing what he had done? How could she be so blind to everything, moving forward with a man who had manipulated her and who, on top of that, had always had sick feelings for me? I felt like I couldn't connect with the sister standing there, so distant, from the person I'd known my whole life. The argument went on for a few more minutes, with Matteo and Maria trying to convince everyone they were right. But no one was listening anymore. No one believed what they were saying. And then my grandfather, with a voice that could never be contested, said what I knew would be the final word: "You two have no place in our home. We have no space for those who try to manipulate and hurt our family. Maria, you made your choice. We've made ours." My grandfather's words were clear. Final. The silence that followed was as heavy as a sentence. Maria tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. I saw the pain in her eyes, but I also saw pride. She didn't regret it. And that broke me. "Then don't come to our wedding," Maria said, her voice empty of emotion. "I don't want any of you there." And that was it. My sister, the one I had loved with all my heart, walked away from me. Walked away from our family. No more words were spoken. She and Matteo left my grandparents' house, and the door shut behind them like a chapter closing, just like that. In the days that followed, I didn't know how to feel. I knew I'd done the right thing. I knew I couldn't let it continue. But still, a part of me felt the loss. There was nothing more to be done. Maria was so blinded that she couldn't see how much she was destroying herself. And even though my family was by my side, the pain of watching my sister choose that man, knowing what he'd done, consumed me. I tried to understand, tried to justify it, but deep down, I knew that when people are blinded by love, they make choices that can't be undone. And maybe, Maria was just doing what she thought was right, even if, to me, it was completely wrong. Maria and Matteo's story didn't end there. I knew their future was far from simple, but at that moment, I couldn't carry the responsibility of saving my sister anymore. Whatever happened with her now was beyond what I could do. I finally left the pain behind, but the weight of that decision, that loss, stayed with me. And even with my family's support, the wound opened that day was something I'd have to live with for a long time.